Chapter 301. Baleful Qi. Shehan urged retreat through voice transmission, warning that further battle would bring no gain. Yet Lu Ji's reply was cold and unyielding. Once a sword was drawn, it would not be returned lightly. With those words, he fully unsheathed his longsword, a vast streak of white sword Qi cleaving skyward. Taoist Huyan laughed heartily, waving a hand as a crimson longsword manifested behind him. Golden spirit patterns blazed along its blade, while a colossal sword projection, tens of thousands of feet long, spread across the heavens. Crimson flames roared from either side like fiery wings, scorching the air across hundreds of kilometers. The temperature soared, heat rolling over the battlefield like a furnace wind. At the same moment, the black axes wielded by the Black Dao warriors ignited with searing flame patterns and crashed down upon the azure-armored Dao warriors and the cultivators of the ubiquitous pavilion. The holy puppet sect, already resigned to death, erupted in tears and laughter as hope surged anew. The tide of battle reversed once more. Xuehan sighed softly at the sight. Just as he moved to assist Lu Ji, Yunni and Bai Fengyi rose to bar his path, and chaos once again engulfed the plaza as the melee resumed. Far away upon the thunderstorm sea, hundreds of thousands of kilometers from the holy puppet sect, Han Li hovered in mid-air facing Zhong Luan. Despite repeated uses of lightning teleportation arrays, he had been unable to shake his pursuer. "You won't escape me even if you flee to the ends of this realm," Zhong Luan sneered. Han Li mocked him in return, deriding his shallow grasp of baleful Qi laws. Zhong Luan's eyes turned cold, acknowledging that Han Li's insight exceeded expectations. Openly, he admitted that the baleful Qi he had planted earlier allowed him to track Han Li effortlessly, making every escape futile. Though calm on the surface, Han Li was inwardly alert. He sensed violent, baleful energy coiling within his heart, growing stronger the more he tried to suppress it. He understood this was a death mark. Once it matured, Zhong Luan's killing blow would follow. The only path forward was swift resolution. With a sweep of his sleeve, Han Li summoned the heavy water true axis in a flash of black light and hurled it forward. Zhong Luan smiled faintly and charged straight toward it, dissolving into black mist at the moment of impact and slipping through unharmed. Han Li formed a hand seal. The water Dao rune upon the axis flared as it expanded and spun wildly, stirring all surrounding water attribute Qi into a raging frenzy. A massive vortex formed upon the sea, and Zhong Luan's black mist was dragged into it before he could react. Yet Han Li knew this was not the end. He recalled the axis, causing the towering waters to collapse back into the sea, waves crashing outward. When the surface finally calmed, Zhong Luan was nowhere to be seen. Suddenly, unprovoked aggression surged in Han Li's heart, black mist seeping from his glabella. Below, the seawater darkened like spilled ink, spreading over 10,000 feet. Black waves churned violently, rising from all sides like a monstrous flower whose petals closed in to devour him. Han Li attempted to evade, but a sharp pain tore through his consciousness as black light flashed upon his glabella. Frozen in place, he was swallowed whole along with the heavy water true axis. He found himself in a pitch-black realm, baleful Qi stretching endlessly in all directions. His spiritual sense was suppressed, his vision clouded by drifting black mist. Launching the heavy water true axis forward, he struck an unseen barrier, only for black tendrils to bind the axis tightly, tightening further the more power he poured in. With a frown, Han Li unleashed his azure bamboo cloud-swarm swords. 72 blades split apart, filling the darkness with thousands of azure sword projections. Outside, the black space appeared as a massive spiked sphere hovering above the sea, absorbing blackened water continuously. Nearby, Zhong Luan sat calmly atop a black crane crowned in gold, his saber flashing with surging baleful Qi. He watched patiently, confident that resistance would only hasten corrosion. The crane flattered him, yet Zhong Luan revealed his true intent, not merely to kill, but to uncover the secrets Fang Pan had coveted so desperately. Gradually, the turmoil within the black sphere faded. Though it absorbed all surrounding seawater, it shrank instead, condensing into a black crystalline mass. Declaring the moment ripe, Zhong Luan approached and placed his palm upon it, forming a black vortex that drew baleful smoke into his body. As the crystal shrank further, Han Li's immobilized form was revealed, eyes shut, body rigid, a dark baleful rune carved upon his glabella. His treasures were sealed in black crystal, struggling futilely. Satisfied, Zhongluan extended a finger toward the rune, ready to strip Han Li's secrets bare. At that instant, Han Li's eyes snapped open. Blue light flashed within them as a translucent thread shot from his glabella, shattering the baleful rune and streaking straight toward Zhongluan's brow. Zhongluan was clearly taken aback by the sudden twist. He instinctively leapt backward, yet made no attempt to resist the translucent thread, allowing it to streak straight toward his glabella. In that instant, azure radiance burst forth from the copper headgear upon his brow, and a phantom four-eyed tiger emerged, opening its jaws to swallow the incoming thread whole. At the same moment, golden scales rippled across Han Li's arm. His fist shone like molten gold as he hurled a heaven-shaking punch toward Zhongluan's chest. Suppressing his shock by force of will, Zhongluan raised his saber in haste, bracing the blade with one hand. A deafening boom split the sky as golden light erupted, and Zhongluan was blasted away like a falling star, crashing into the sea and sending towering waves surging outward. Han Li did not relent. Forming seals with both hands, he swept his sleeves wide. The 72 azure bamboo cloud swarm swords shattered the surrounding black crystal and transformed into streaks of azure light, plunging into the sea in pursuit. Simultaneously, the water Dao rune upon the heavy water true axis flared, tearing free of its confinement and crashing downward after them. All this unfolded within a few breaths. Only then did the massive black crane in the heavens react, beating its wings furiously. Black flames intensified along its pinions as it hurled two enormous fireballs toward the heavy water true axis. Explosions thundered in succession, black fire engulfing the axis and knocking it askew, forcing it to carve through the sea before steadying itself and flying back toward Han Li. Han Li spared the crane only a fleeting glance before refocusing on the sea. From the depths, a black shadow shot upward. Zhongluan burst forth, saber clenched tight, striking backward without pause. Spirit patterns ignited along the blade as layers of saber light rolled outward like crashing surf. In response, glowing azure swords erupted from the water amid splashing spray, colliding with the saber waves in a shrill grind. One projection after another shattered, while the flying swords were halted in midair. Zhongluan continued retreating until he landed upon the crane's back, fixing Han Li with a wrathful stare. "I never imagined you could cleanse my baleful qi," Zhongluan said coldly. "Even with extraordinary spiritual sense, that should be impossible. Have you cultivated the forbidden spirit refinement technique?" Han Li offered no reply. With a sweep of his sleeve, the 72 swords returned, merging into a single azure longsword that fell into his grasp. "So many secrets," Zhongluan laughed darkly. "No wonder Fang Pan hunted you so obsessively. I look forward to seizing your nascent soul and uncovering them all." "Silence is a virtue," Han Li replied indifferently. Within him, the mantra, treasured axis, reversed its rotation, more than 40 time Dao runes blazing at once. He vanished without a trace, reappearing upon the crane's back as though teleporting through the void. Before Zhongluan could react, the azure sword pierced straight through his heart. Zhongluan's eyes went wide as black blood poured forth, staining his robes. "Master!" the crane shrieked. Han Li withdrew his blade and retreated instantly. Zhongluan's body then dissolved into black mist. It had only been a baleful qi clone. Elsewhere, smoke gathered and Zhongluan reformed, mockery gone from his gaze, replaced by icy gravity. Han Li felt a trace of frustration. With his mantra treasured axis incomplete, the reversal true axis could not yet slay such an enemy in one strike. "I underestimated you," Zhongluan said grimly. "You have mastered speed laws like Fang Pan. No, even beyond him. No wonder he fell." Han Li let the misunderstanding stand. "Your survival was prepared for Fang Pan, wasn't it?" "Indeed," Zhongluan admitted. He grew too fast to ignore. "I never thought the safeguard would save me from another instead." Even as he spoke, his concealed hand formed seals. Crimson light spread across strange patterns on his palm, his skin reddening beneath the cloak. Alarm flickered in the crane's eyes as black light gathered beneath its wings. Han Li observed calmly. The heavy water true axis hovered before him, his longsword ready, while two concealed orbs of heavy water veined lightning rested within his sleeve. Zhongluan began chanting, His pupils turned crimson, red mist rising as his saber took on a blood-red glow. His aura shifted, baleful yet transformed. "This ends now," Zhong Luan declared, vanishing as a crimson shadow. He reappeared at Han Li's flank, slashing upward from an impossible angle. Han Li met the strike, using the clash to retreat and widen the distance. As he did, the two lightning orbs slipped free and fell before Zhong Luan. Purple lightning veins flared, detonating with thunderous force. A storm of lightning engulfed the area, spanning thousands of feet. Before it faded, the second orb ignited, its veins golden. Another cataclysm erupted, twin black suns blooming above the sea as purple and gold lightning raged, shaking space itself. The sea boiled, heavy water spraying as shockwaves raised monstrous tides. The crane fled far away, trembling as it watched. "The divine Devilbane lightning prevails," Han Li murmured, observing the devastation. One orb bore thunderstorm sea crystal power, the other divine Devilbane lightning refined through his swords. Both were rare, but the latter was clearly superior. As the light faded, tattered black cloth and blood mist lingered, but Han Li's expression darkened. Zhong Luan's aura still filled the region. The crimson-stained sea began to churn and bubble, vast blisters rising across hundreds of kilometers, heralding that the battle was far from over. Chapter 303, Astonishment. Han Li's brows knit as he looked toward the distant expanse, where the crimson sea boiled without rest. Waves churned violently as more than 100 colossal shadows rose slowly from the depths, carrying with them a suffocating, nauseating stench of blood. He immediately circulated his spirit refinement technique to guard his consciousness, fingers tightening around his sword as blue radiance flickered in his eyes and swept across the sea's surface. One by one, the shadows broke through the water, revealing countless varieties of marine demon beasts, each of a different form and origin. These creatures were not unfamiliar to Han Li. He had seen records of them in ancient texts. Their cultivation varied greatly, with the strongest already at the true immortal stage. Yet now, every single one floated belly up upon the sea, lifeless beyond doubt. Each corpse bore a massive circular hole in its abdomen, blood pouring endlessly outward, dyeing the waters into a vast crimson curtain. The flesh around the wounds was blown outward, clear proof that their bodies had detonated from within rather than being struck down by external force. Suddenly, a beast-like roar shook the heavens, and towering waves swept across the sea. From beneath the waters, a gigantic crimson hand, more than 1,000 feet across, burst forth and clawed toward Han Li. He shot backward at once, but an identical crimson hand erupted along his retreat path, grasping for him without pause. Han Li twisted into a streak of azure light to evade, yet two more colossal hands surged up, one before him, one behind, closing in with terrifying speed. Before he could react, he was trapped between them. The sea exploded into chaos as an enormous figure, over 10,000 feet tall, slowly emerged from the depths. It was a naked crimson giant, its muscles sharply defined and slick with fresh blood, save for an azure loincloth at its waist. Its face was twisted and grotesque, yet traces of Zhong Luan's features remained. In addition to the arms on its shoulders, another pair grew beneath its ribs, the very hands pinning Han Li in place. It felt as though two massive mountains were grinding together around him. Bones creaked and groaned as Han Li roared, golden scales instantly spreading over his arms. Summoning all his strength, he forced the palms apart just enough to open a narrow gap. The crimson giant thundered in fury, pouring even greater power into its grip and crushing the gap shut once more. Han Li's face flushed deep red as he let out a low bellow. In the next instant, his muscles swelled explosively, his body expanding like an inflating drum as he transformed into a towering golden ape, more than 10,000 feet tall. White light shimmered across his form as 7 specks of blue starlight appeared over his chest and abdomen, further amplifying his size. The golden ape glared fiercely at the crimson giant and wrenched its arms outward, not only forcing the hands apart but seizing them as well. With a violent twist, cracking sounds rang out, followed by a howl of pain. Yet at the same moment, the crimson giant's remaining hands shot forward, locking the ape's arms in a crushing vice. It began chanting in a rumbling voice, and strange corkscrew-shaped patterns lit up on its palms. From within them, 2 crimson serpents slithered out, coiling tightly around the ape's arms. Scorching pain surged through Hun Li's limbs. He released his grip and staggered back several steps. Looking down, he saw spiraling marks burned into his arms all the way to his shoulders, as if branded into his flesh. "With my baleful blood mark upon you, death is inevitable," the Crimson Giant declared, its voice shaking the void. As it continued chanting, enormous crimson runes manifested across its body. The pain in Hun Li's arms intensified relentlessly. He plunged them into the seawater, yet the agony did not abate. Worse still, his blood essence began to surge wildly through his body, like an untamed beast breaking free. He could feel its temperature soaring, on the verge of igniting and bursting through his veins, threatening to tear his body apart from within. If not for his profound immortal physique and his cultivation of the organ refinement origin arts, his organs would have already exploded. Shock filled Hun Li's heart. His opponent's baleful chi law was terrifying, first disturbing his spiritual sense, and now directly seizing control of his blood essence. Steeling himself, he tried to suppress the turmoil with immortal spiritual power, but it failed once more. His bloodline, infused with numerous true spirit essences, was far too powerful to be restrained so simply. A sudden draconic roar erupted from within him. Golden light flared as a massive 5-clawed golden dragon projection appeared behind him, roaring toward the heavens. The golden ape convulsed in agony, letting out a pained roar. "A true spirit bloodline? Excellent! The heavens favor me indeed." The Crimson Giant laughed in delight. It formed an intricate seal with all 4 hands. Crescent-shaped runes shimmered across its body, glowing with molten crimson and yellow light. A clear phoenix cry rang out, and a radiant phoenix projection appeared beside the golden dragon behind Hun Li. From afar, the black crane, watching from over 100,000 feet away, stared in astonishment. More than one true spirit bloodline? Normally a blessing, but before Master, they will become his doom, it sneered. As its words faded, an azure Luan bird projection emerged, followed by a lightning bird wrapped in silver arcs. Then came a 5-colored peacock and a massive black turtle. "Impossible! How can there be so many?" the black crane cried, utterly stunned. Agonized roars thundered from the golden ape as the true spirit projections behind it writhed violently, some struggling skyward, others sinking toward the sea. The crimson brands on its arms blazed brightly, and the blood essence within Han Li surged even more savagely, battering his veins like a maddened bull. The pain was worse than being flayed alive or having his bones torn free. Hun Li could feel his blood essence nearing its limit. Once it crossed that threshold, he would meet the same fate as the demon beasts drifting dead upon the Crimson Sea. Seeing Hun Li wavering at the brink of exhaustion, the Crimson Giant revealed a ghastly grin and roared that his end had come. At once, agony surged through Hun Li's body several-fold, as if countless needles pierced his meridians and bones. Golden light flickered in his eyes as he threw back his head and roared, abandoning all restraint over his blood essence, and devoting himself fully to activating the Provenant's true devil arts. Purplish golden scales spread across his flesh as 2 ferocious heads and 4 additional arms burst forth from his body. 6 eyes opened in unison, and silver horns emerged from the side heads. With the holy Nirvana physique unleashed, the rampaging true spirit projections were drawn back into him, his form swelling until he towered over the Crimson Giant. The scales fused into ancient rune-inscribed armor, radiating an overwhelming aura. From afar, Zhongluan stared in disbelief, unable to comprehend how Han Li had escaped the baleful blood mark's control. Unease stirred in his heart as he sensed the danger of this transformation. Han Li himself harbored no certainty that the Provenant's true devil arts could fully suppress the blood essence. He had merely unified his true spirit bloodlines to prevent them from tearing him apart. Such a fusion was familiar to him from his days in the spirit realm. All 3 heads grinned as 6 massive arms blurred, unleashing countless fist projections toward Zhongluan. Golden shadows filled the sky, vanishing an instant later as space around the Crimson Giant churned violently, the fists reappearing to crash down upon it. The giant retaliated with its own flurry, thunderous booms ringing endlessly. Before the echoes faded, an enormous figure descended from above like a falling mountain, a massive longsword cleaving downward. The Crimson Giant hastily conjured a saber to parry, but the clash forced it to one knee, its blade biting into its own shoulder. Shockwaves ravaged the sea, killing distant creatures outright. Han Li advanced and stomped upon the giant's chest. A gaping maw of white fangs opened there, snapping shut like a trap, yet before it could bite, his foot crushed it, shattering dozens of teeth and caving in the chest. Blood sprayed as the crimson giant struggled upward, saber and fists lashing out, but it was overwhelmed by the giant ape's 4 remaining arms. Each thunderous blow shook the sea until its body was reduced to mangled ruin. Seizing its arms, Han Li freed his sword and slashed toward its head. Pinned beneath his weight, the crimson giant could not evade. With a thunderous howl, half its head was severed, its arms falling limp. The distant black crane cried out in alarm, eyes filled with fear as it looked upon Han Li. Golden light gathered in Han Li's palm for the finishing strike. Yet the crimson giant suddenly dissolved into viscous, bloody sludge, ensnaring 3 of his hands and 1 foot. Immense suction locked him in place as strange golden threads swam through the sludge toward him. Sensing terrifying law fluctuations, Han Li struggled desperately, but could only free himself a short distance before the threads pierced his flesh like needles. Despite his armor, the threads entered unimpeded, flooding him with numbness as his immortal spiritual power drained away in torrents. His radiance dimmed, his towering form shrinking rapidly back to human size, half his body trapped in sludge. Though immobilized, the draining threads finally vanished. Han Li's face was pale, brows knit tightly, as a portion of sludge surged nearby, forming Zhongluan's upper body. Coldly, Zhongluan admitted he had underestimated him, having been forced to expend baleful spirit threads accumulated over tens of thousands of years. Unless Han Li's secrets were uncovered, this loss would be intolerable. Han Li demanded to know whose orders drove this relentless pursuit. Secretly, he grasped an immortal origin stone within the sludge, absorbing its power. Zhongluan deflected the question, instead probing why Fang Pan had hunted him. Threatening a soul search of unique cruelty, Han Li smiled faintly, welcoming the attempt. With a cold snort, Zhongluan summoned his crimson saber and surged forward like a blood-red wave, patterns blazing as he raised the blade high and brought it crashing down toward Han Li. Han Li clenched his fists, veins standing out as he summoned every shred of strength to raise his arms, yet they would not budge in the slightest, as though twin mountains had been shackled to them. In the same breath, the crimson saber projection flashed toward him, crossing the distance in an instant. But when it came within 100 feet of his head, its momentum abruptly faltered, slowing to a crawl, as if its edge had sunk into countless layers of tough, golden silk. At that moment, the mantra-treasured axis burst into being behind Han Li in a blaze of golden radiance. It revolved slowly, and more than 40 illuminated time Dao runes upon its surface sent out concentric ripples of golden light. Several hundred feet away, Zhongluan sensed the strange law fluctuations and was shocked to find that no matter how fiercely he pressed down, the saber would not descend any faster. A realization struck him like thunder. His expression twisted as he shouted, "This time law power? Burn him to ashes, now!" Abandoning any thought of sparing Han Li's soul, Zhongluan resolved to end the fight at once, having already learned that Han Li was no foe he could dominate at will. As his command echoed, a piercing cry split the heavens. The massive black crane dove from above, wings beating furiously as an ocean of scorching black flames poured toward Han Li. Yet the instant those flames entered the golden ripples, they too slowed to a near standstill, unable to approach him for the time being. Just then, a tiny silver figure wreathed in fire appeared on Han Li's shoulder in a flash of light. It patted its belly and stared eagerly at the incoming flames, as though delighted by the feast. "Go," Han Li said calmly. The small figure shot upward at once, transforming midair into a colossal silver fire raven. Vast silver flames surged from its body as it crashed into the black fire, while the raven itself lunged straight at the black crane. High above, silver and black clashed as the 2 enormous birds battled savagely, sheets of flame erupting from their wings. Zhongluan's face grew darker by the second. He forced his saber downward with one hand while forming seals with the other, then plunged that hand into the bloody sludge below. Runes bloomed instantly around his arm, spreading outward as the sea of blood roiled violently. Titanic waves surged up and swept toward Han Li, only to slow as well under the dominion of the mantra-treasured axis. Crimson waves towered around Han Li like walls, and though he appeared composed amid the onslaught, in truth he was under immense strain. His immortal spiritual power was rapidly depleting. Even after drawing upon an immortal origin stone, he knew he could not sustain the mantra-treasured axis much longer. With a swift seal and a low chant, azure light erupted from the bloody sea. 72 azure bamboo cloud-swarm swords forced their way up, releasing countless streaks of sword light that intertwined into a massive sphere of azure radiance beneath him. A thunderous dragon's roar shook the world as the sphere exploded apart. An azure coiled dragon burst forth and soared skyward, Han Li standing upon its head as the azure coil sword array carried him free of the sludge. Only after stabilizing himself did the mantra-treasured axis shrink into a golden orb and return to his body. Han Li's expression remained steady as he fixed his gaze on Zhong Luan. He swallowed an azure pill, drew forth another immortal origin stone to restore his strength, and reached out with his free hand. The azure dragon split apart once more into 72 flying swords, which fused into a single azure longsword that flew into his grasp. Freed from the time suppression, Zhong Luan slammed both hands into the sea, raising a colossal wave that hurled him into the sky. At the same time, a translucent crimson thread shot from his mouth into his palm. His flesh split open and fused with the crimson saber, drawing a groan of pain from his throat. Vein-like patterns bulged across the blade, pulsing as though alive. Golden, web-like patterns spread across Zhong Luan's body, extending into the crimson sea below. As the saber throbbed, the bloody sludge transformed into baleful blood chi and streamed into the blade through those veins. The saber swelled to twice its size, exuding terrifying law fluctuations as the baleful chi flooded the region. When Zhong Luan closed to within 1,000 feet of Han Li, the sea below had been completely drained, yet the saber still pulsed hungrily. His body withered, cheeks hollowing, as if the weapon were draining him dry. "Die!" he roared, swinging the saber in a sweeping arc. Space itself trembled as countless saber projections surged toward Han Li. Han Li tightened his grip on the longsword, his face grim, yet he did not block. Instead, he shouted, "Let heaven and earth be reversed." In an instant, sky and sea traded places. The vast ocean became the heavens, while the cloudy sky sank below, forming a nightmarish inversion. Zhong Luan reeled in shock. His all-out strike was suddenly racing toward the sea instead of Han Li. Gritting his teeth, he forcibly twisted the attack back on course. Golden-lit saber light, laden with baleful blood chi, tore straight through Han Li's body. Slash after slash followed in a merciless storm, more than 300 strikes falling before the saber's power was finally exhausted. Explosions thundered through the air as crimson light detonated, clouds churned, and space quaked. "There's no way you survived that." Zhong Luan laughed wildly, the saber in his hand reverting to dull black. A sharp snap echoed through the sky. Heaven and earth returned to normal. Dark clouds still roiled above, but far below, a trench hundreds of kilometers long split the sea apart, crimson ki surging within it like a divine wound. Zhong Luan froze, disbelief etched across his face as he looked up. Han Li stood there unscathed, a mocking sneer upon his lips. "How?" Zhong Luan whispered. Han Li's smile widened. "Everything you saw was nothing but illusion." Zhong Luan's desperate assault had drained nearly all his baleful chi and immortal origin stones, while Han Li had used the moment to restore his own strength. The outcome was already clear. "Don't think this is over." Zhong Luan snarled. With a vicious motion, he sent the detached black saber hurtling toward Han Li. Han Li struck it with his azure longsword, but at the instant of impact, a fine crack appeared along the black blade amid a flash of crimson light. He tried to withdraw, yet it was too late. A deafening boom erupted as a crimson sun over 10,000 feet wide blossomed above the sea, radiating blinding light. Devastating shockwaves swept outward, raising monstrous waves. Zhong Luan spat a mouthful of blood, then crushed a black jade pendant in his hand. Black mist surged forth, engulfing him, and he vanished just before the waves crashed down.